Well, hey there, colleague. How are you doing? I wanted to share with you something that I'm experimenting with this year in my general level ninth grade world history classes that I'm super excited about. So at the time of this video, it is September 6th of 2024. We've been in school for a total of 3 weeks now. And I started this actually on the second day of school, sort of on a whim. Let me just talk about what it is. It's an article of the day, an article of the day warm up. So, little backstory, if you're familiar with article of the week, that's something that teacher author Kelly Gallagher created to help his English language arts students to learn more about the world. And what Kelly would do is he would give the students an article, typically 1 to 2 pages front and back. They would get started annotating the article and reading it in class for a bit on Monday, and then on Friday, they had to submit like a 1 page written reflection about the article. And so the whole purpose was to help them to build knowledge about the world, build knowledge about the world. And so years ago, when I heard about this, I, like thousands of other teachers, started to try it because I thought, I want my students to know more about the world as well. I believe that that will make them more literate, more powerful. And as I learned more about the science of learning and the role that knowledge plays in enabling students to think more critically, argue better, write better, read better, I became super passionate about the practice. So if you're familiar with my book, These Six Things, chapter 3 is about knowledge building. And in chapter 3, I talk about Kelly Gallagher's article of the week assignment. But as I kept learning about knowledge building in education, I started to realize that knowledge also produces motivation. And so when I was writing this book, The Will to Learn, I had to include something about the role that just creating a knowledge-rich classroom plays in cultivating students' motivation, specifically students valuing of the subject matter, valuing of the course, valuing of the discipline. So strategy 5 in this book, The Will to Learn, is called a feast of knowledge, or teach stuff lots. So enter this school year. It's the first time in a number of years that I've taught this general level world history class. And like many general level classes in American high schools, there's a basic curriculum that students need to learn. There are shared assessments that me and my other colleagues in the course use to assess student learning, but this is all intentionally pretty basic stuff. And so when I was seeking to pump up the knowledge richness of this general world history class this year, I was really quickly kind of desperate for what am I going to do? And I thought, well, article of the week, yeah, that would be good to do. But then thank goodness I happened to read a news article that day. It was the first day of school, and it was called the Continent Conundrum. And it was about how different experts defined the world's continents in different ways. And the continents were one of the first things that my students were going to be learning about. And so I printed out this short article for the students. I had it ready on the desk when they came in on day 2. I told them to grab the article, and they only had 2 things to do with the article. They needed to, as a warm-up, scan through the article and circle any unfamiliar words. I said if it's a word you're not sure how to pronounce, a word that you're not sure that you could define, or just a word that you don't use often, circle it. I then called on students after the warm-up to share with me their words. We circled the words. I did this on the document camera, made a little arrow, quickly defined them. You can kind of see a little example here of what this looks like. And then I simply read the article aloud to them with them following along. I did this on the document camera. And then at the end, I had them paraphrase the article, because paraphrasing is one of the skills that my same course colleagues have indicated we really want to work on with the 9th grade students. So I said, just paraphrase the article, put the article, the gist of the article, down at the bottom of the page in your own words. And I felt really good after doing this the first day of school. I thought this was a really good use of 10 or 15 minutes of time. Because the curriculum is so basic, I have that much time to spare. And so I just started this daily. And so during my prep on that second day of school, I looked for another article to do the next day. And I've continued doing this, an article every single day, every day of school since then. Sometimes I'll find 2 short articles. So I like to use theweek.com because they've got these little every morning and every evening kind of a summary. There's a variety of topics in there. I also like to use sometimes articles from the website Axios because they're kind of bullet pointed and real focused articles. Because I don't want anything that's really, really long. I mean, one time I used an article from the U.S. government explaining what swing states are. So that was like a 2-page article. So at this point in the year, just 3 weeks into the school year, my students have read multiple articles about the Russia-Ukraine crisis, about the Israel-Hamas crisis. They've read an article about young adult mental health, a couple articles about how the CEO of social media platform Telegram was arrested in France. So we talked about this whole idea of free speech on social media platforms. A couple articles about about the US presidential election. Obviously, you got to be really careful here. Make sure the articles are balanced. Make sure that you're teaching students to look for bias. And every single time, the students are doing the same thing. We're identifying unfamiliar words, defining them, reading the article together, paraphrasing at the bottom. Sometimes I'll ask them to give a question at the bottom that they still have about the event. And by the way, you can find these on my website. If you just Google Dave Stewart Article of the Week, you'll find this list of articles. I'm just posting them on that Article of the Week page so that if another teacher wants to use them, you can go ahead. And so let's talk about the positives and negatives that I've seen so far with using this strategy. So a huge positive is that the more you learn, the easier it is to learn more things. So the first time we talked about Israel, Hamas, Palestine, and all this stuff is a lot of new learning for most of my students. But once we get to the third or the fourth article that's just sort of updating on the current events in that conflict, it's just easier for them to take those new events, put them into what they already know, and they're more likely to remember those events later on. The more knowledge you build, the easier it is to build knowledge, and the easier it is to value the knowledge that you're building. So in my 5 key beliefs pyramid, the value belief, it's really hard to value something that you know nothing about. But sure enough, these students are asking better questions as we progress through the year. And I expect in a month or two, if I can keep this up, they're going to be asking lots of great questions and starting to have really informed opinions on some of these really complex current events issues. Okay, and the biggest drawback of this is obviously that it does take time. So there's no way that I could do this in a class with a packed curriculum or like a scripted curriculum. I don't have that. I have the opposite problem where it's a super basic curriculum, and we teachers kind of have to decide how we're going to teach the curriculum so the kids can be successful on the shared end of unit assessments, and then also use the rest of the time as productively as we can. So there's a lot of teacher freedom there. And because I'm using this 10 or 15 minutes every single warm up, I do have to really be efficient with the way that I teach the basic curriculum. But thankfully, I've been working on being really efficient as a teacher for a lot of years, and I find that I do better and my students do better when my students and I have to keep things at a good, strong, gentle pace. And that idea of gentle urgency, by the way, is strategy 3 in this book, because that helps a lot with our credibility and just with student engagement. Okay, last thing that I want to share, because I want you to think about how, yes, this is achieving a lot of learning objectives. Like I want my students to grow knowledge about the world, the history of the world, and the world today. So this is definitely checking those boxes with big old Sharpie pen marks. But I also predict that this is going to have a huge impact on their motivation over time. And so today I did something that kind of was meant to start to work on that. So what I did is I just did a screenshot of all the different articles that we've read so far in the first 3 weeks of school. And over on the side, I kind of summarized. We've read 13 different articles, and we've circled and defined at least 50 different new words. And all that I did is I told my students that, and I said, hey, by the way, this is extra stuff that I'm putting into the class. And here's your question. Why do you think I'm doing that? Why do you think I'm doing that? And they talked about it to each other. And, one kid raises his hand and says, because you want us to be miserable. And I said, no, just productively miserable. But then others said, because you want us to grow smarter. And I said, yeah, that's right. That's definitely my job. We should be smarter when we leave class and when we enter class. It's certainly our goal. And one student even pointed at this poster up in the front of my room and said, because your room poster says do hard things. And I said, yeah, that is exactly right too. We do challenge ourselves in this class. It's important to me that we do that. But I closed out this little chunk of the lesson by saying, this is also because I respect you. I respect you. I teach you as if you are my own children. And if I have 60 minutes every day or whatever it is, where my job is to help you to grow as much as possible, I'm going to think really hard about all of those minutes and make sure that you're gaining new words, that you're gaining awareness of the world, that you're building knowledge, that you're thinking as many of those minutes as possible. And I just left it at that. So in terms of student motivation, what was I doing right there? Well, one, I was definitely sending a signal of my credibility. I wanted them to think for a minute about why their teacher does what he does. And I'm hoping that their minds will slowly but surely arrive at the point that he does what he does because he knows what he's doing. He knows where he's taking us. I'm also trying to cultivate efficacy by using this slide right here, because the thing with efficacy, when a student believes that they can succeed, The best thing to build efficacy is having already succeeded. And so whether they're the most struggling student in the class or the highest achieving student in the class, just by virtue of hanging in there while we do these articles each day, they've all succeeded. And I walk around every time. I look, make sure we got words circled, make sure that we're paraphrasing. Sometimes students resist, sometimes they refuse, but I'm still walking around and checking in with them to make sure that they know, yes, I know that right now you're not doing this. Yes, that is a problem for me because I want you to grow. And so by doing that classroom management stuff during this article assignment, I can say, yeah, you all have read at least a bit of each of these articles. You've all learned at least a few new words. You have all done something that most people don't do in ninth grade by reading this much and learning this much on top of learning a world history curriculum. So that's helping with efficacy. Also, the focus on just identifying unfamiliar words and paraphrasing an article, those are key reading skills when you encounter a difficult article or a difficult passage or a difficult poem. You want to identify unfamiliar words. You want to see if you can put it in your own words. Give the gist of the article. So that's going to enhance the effort belief over time because they're going to be clearer on what good effort looks like when you encounter a complex article about what is a swing state. When you encounter a pretty nitty-gritty article on which groups the Harris and Trump campaigns are currently targeting in their efforts to win the election. So it's helping with the effort belief, the credibility belief. I also think it helps with the belonging belief because we are doing this together. This is one thing that I love about the way that I'm doing it this year versus previous years is I'm not sending any of this home. I'm not sending any of this home because I have the time in class to do it because I move through these article lessons very quickly. And so this is work that we are all doing together. So over time, the student starts to realize I am the kind of person that reads articles every day because that is in fact what I'm doing. I may still be like, the one kid who says that Stuart's just trying to make us miserable, but I am doing this, so I am the kind of person who does this. And then last, I'm barely seeing this one, but I'm hoping, and I'm really confident in this hope that over time the value belief is going to grow because they're going to learn more stuff about these big events happening in the world, about these little one-off articles that I'll share. And the more that they learn, the more that they eat at the table of the feast of knowledge, the more I predict they're going to like it. So this article of the day idea won't work for all teachers. You have to have quite a bit of room in your curriculum. 10 to 15 minutes per lesson is a lot. But in these two classes that I'm teaching, these two sections of regular world history, I do have that space. And as of right now, just 3 weeks into it, I have no intentions to slow down on this activity. I think this activity is going to make my teaching journey this year just really special because I'm trying something new, something that I'm confident in. So if there's anything in here that's helpful, first of all, let's give credit to Kelly Gallagher, who gave me the idea of Article of the Week, me and so many others, many, many years ago. And second, let's give credit to you, because what you're going to do is you're going to take what I've said and you're going to make it your own. Just like I took what Kelly Gallagher said, and I'm making it my own. Even this long into doing Article of the Week, I'm still making these adjustments. In this case, a pretty big adjustment into an article of the day. All right, colleagues, cheers to you. It's Friday for me, so I'm about to go home, get me some rest and rejuvenation. I wish you and yours well. Take care.